Hi, everybody. This week we're on week 5 and we're going to be discussing the Patriot Act. One of the things I wanted to bring to your attention when you're looking to do a paper, and I hope some of you know how to do this, if you go onto a certain bullet area, do you agree with the steps of the, let's do this one. What advantage do the provisions of the Patriot Act offer American law enforcement? Consider the exclusionary rule in your response. If you highlight it and you right-click it, you can go to a Google search on it right there and just click on that and you'll get different Google sites to go to. So I'm hoping that you knew this, but if you didn't, now you do. So first we need to know what the Patriot Act is. And so I have put things, I'm going to be sending them to you. And once you know what the Patriot Act is, then we need to go to what is the pros and cons of the Patriot Act. Um, at what point in time in our life do my freedoms outweigh your freedoms? When do I get to say, you know what, forget all of your freedoms because I'm terrified to live here? Remember, this came out because of 911, and when we're looking at the Patriot Act, it was made to strengthen and detect, prevent, and prosecute the financing of terrorism was one of them. It was to protect our homelands. It was to protect our institutions. Um, and what would happen is that now the government, it definitely can get into a lot of areas they couldn't get into before without that warrant. So we have to look at that and say, how do we, when do our rights end to protect the rights of others? So the surveillance authority was a big one. It allowed them to do a lot of exigent search warrants, a lot more in the communication laws, so getting people's phone messages, tapping into people's phones. So communications was it was much easier to get those warrants. But there's cons with that Patriot Act too. And that Patriot Act we need to look, and I will send this to you so you can look at that. But what happens here is um, it allows law enforcement to collect data that they wouldn't have been able to collect before without a warrant. So you need to look and see, how did that affect everything? You hear about the FISA warrants all the time having to do with President Trump and President Biden. So how did this come into play? Remember that there's more legislation that has come out. In 2017, they added more, but I'm going to give you 2014 so you can look at what it was in 2000, the USA Freedom Act of 2014. And this will help you understand some of what is in effect still now to this day. Part of this Patriot Act allowed us to get information in different forms, and I want you to look into that. Going into our week 5 assignment, we're going to look at the response to terrorism. And when we look at the response to terrorism, I thought this would be your hardest paper that you've had to do in a while. One of the things I wanted to bring up to your attention is and I don't know how many of you know this or don't, but if you click something and then you right click it, you can look it up under Google this way. And you'll find a lot of sources that way as well. So we're going to be going into human trafficking, and I thought, first of all, we need to understand what human trafficking is. And very often people think it only has to do with the sex trades, which it does not. So what is human trafficking? It's also known trafficking in persons is a crime that involves compelling or coercing a person to provide labor or services or to engage in commercial sex acts. The coercion can be subtle or overt, physical or psychological. Exploitation of a minor for commercial sex is human trafficking, regardless of any form of force, fraud, or coercion. So there's also, you have a lot of human trafficking that's brought over to the United States for working in various businesses. It's for your maid services, your restaurant services. It's for labor, human trafficking in labor. So we need to look at that. That also includes working off a debt. So we'll bring you over to the United States, but you need to work off this debt. And that happens an awful lot in your larger cities. Please be advised, though, human trafficking happens in every city and every town, including the one you're living in. You'd be surprised to see how much there is. So I'm attaching this page because this is the Department of Justice page, and the Department of Justice page has an awful lot that you can look at in there. It says, what is the DOJ doing? And the DOJ is the Department of Justice, and that's a really important group to look at it because they are spearheading a lot of work that's going on. Now, this was updated in September of 2022, so you can tell that it's very recent. The next thing I'm going to be sending you is what is the name and the meaning of a Muslim fundamentalist. And I think it's important to understand that as it's part of the question, and hopefully part of this article will help you. I'm sending you this, which is Beyond the Tears of Human Trafficking, and there's parts of this you can go to directly and look at. I've read this paper and I thought it was very interesting and brought up some things that I didn't know. But there's a lot I don't know, but when you read, you gain power. I also wanted to do this, myprojectusa.org. It's Muslims Against Human Trafficking. They actually have their own Facebook page as well. So I think this page I'm going to send to you, I thought it was very interesting. I was surprised to see that it was a $150 billion industry worldwide, and that was really a number that I wasn't ready for. I would have thought in the billions, but not 150 billion. So I want you to, and that sex trafficking is 50% of all human trafficking cases. So I want you to look at that, where women and girls are 75% of that trafficking. So that will, I'll send this page to you as well, and I think you'll find it interesting. And there's a whole bunch of different things you can go to and look at in here. I also want to send the Women's Islamic Initiative in Spirituality Equality, and it's eradicating sex trafficking. This is their own page at WISE, and I thought that there's things that you can get from here that will be helpful to. And the Quran and Justice, and I will send this as well to you. The 5 pillars of Islam are very important. The 5 pillars are the core beliefs and practices of Islam: profession of faith, prayer, alms, fasting, and pilgrimage. So I think that we need to know what those are when this is, part of the entire package that you'll be looking at. I'm going to be sending you this as well, and this has to do with Islamic law, because Islamic law is also known as Sharia law, and it's important to know what is expected and what is believed in there. Has in fact adapted 2 courses, 5 indispensable, and we went over that on the first one I went, which would be religion, life, intellect, offspring, and property. So you'll have that as well. And then the United Nations. The United Nations is the group that is the forefront for all human trafficking. Remember, human trafficking is the recruitment, transportation, transfer, harboring, or receipt of people through force, fraud, or deception with the aim of exploiting them for profit. Men, women, and children of all age from all backgrounds can become victims of this crime, which occurs in every region of the world. The trafficker often uses violence or fraudulent employment agencies and fake promises of education and job opportunities to trick and coerce. If you were to look at this definition that was here now, and think about this when you're writing their paper. Recently, we had a group of people from Venezuela that were brought to Martha's Vineyard. Would they fit into this? Were they transported under fraud? Were they given hope that they would have jobs, that they would have a place to live, that they would have food on the table, that they'd have access to becoming citizens? Were they human trafficked? That'd be a question I would ask you, and I think that you could probably write that into your paper. Would that be considered human trafficking? Give your opinion on that, looking at this definition that the United Nations gives. So, on that note, I wish you all well. If you have any questions, please feel free to text me. I'll be able to text for the next 4 days, and I'll be looking at my mail and going on to the Canvas every single day, so feel free to contact me that way. I will not be able to answer phone, but I'll be able to text. Thank you. Have a good week.